Qing Prose Little Angel. The differences between a woman's virginity and motherhood. A girlfriend from junior high school suddenly wrote me a letter, saying that she followed her husband to Nanjing 6 months ago. Recently, due to family matters in Shanghai, she decided to take her little angel back and planned to go back to Nanjing at 8 a.m. tomorrow. He set off on the Beijing-Shanghai Express, and after arriving in Shanghai he planned to stay at my house overnight so that he could talk to me about everything. At the end, he also added an addendum, saying that it would be best to invite me to the North Station to meet him at about 2:30 p.m. that day. Wait, the word little angel made me extremely curious. Did Zhang Jiji also have a little angel? The scene when she shouted struggle on the podium of the People's Assembly 7 years ago is still in my mind. Later, I heard that she ran away because she opposed the marriage arranged by her parents. After many twists and turns, she finally achieved her goal and lived with Zhu Mingqiu in Hangzhou. Her little angel must have been raised very cutely. I thought of my little daughter Weiwei, who was still in the hands of her wet nurse while I was living in Shaoyao in Shanghai. I couldn't help but feel ashamed to see them. I did a lot of things that night. Dreaming that she was holding a Shirley Temple-like child and looking at the Great Compassion spell bag hanging on my Weiwei's chest and laughing. The next day I ate my lunch in a hurry, freshened up a bit, put on my coat, and went to the train station. I will definitely be disappointed by Xiang Xiao. His opinion is, although little angels are decorations in paradise-rich people's homes, they are also a burden to ordinary people's homes. Cuteness cannot compete with disgusting. But I didn't think so, so we parted ways. He went out to do his official duties, and I walked towards North Station. After waiting for half an hour, the bus started to arrive at the station, and the passengers came out one after another. I stood at the ticket counter and looked around, but I never saw her mother and son again. Seeing that it was almost 3:30, there were even fewer people coming out. I hurriedly bought a platform ticket and went inside. I finally found her on a third-class train. She was holding a child in a purple satin robe in one hand. He was carrying 2 pieces of shit cloth and made no arrangements. You waited so hard for me. I stepped forward and shouted, feeling both hateful and happy. But her attitude was calm and she told me the bus was very crowded when it arrived, so I had to let people go first. When we were about to get off, the child pooped. What if we had to let him poop cleanly and stuff it in his belly? He ate a lot of food in the car and drank it all up. After pooping, you have to wipe his butt for him. You can't come to your house with poop on it. People with children are no different than they used to be when they were students. When the car arrives, they can just pick up the small mesh basket and walk. She was nagging, as if she was blaming me for not knowing about other people's hardships. So I couldn't argue with her just after we met. So she had to stop her with a smile. Forget it. Forget it. It's not good for girls to be too impatient. Now it's time to get going. Why are you still carrying those 2 precious things? You're a mother too. You can't live without your child's excrement cloth. How can you throw it away? Besides, I didn't bring much this time, okay? Okay, I was afraid that she would talk again. He went down and said, but it's useless for you to carry it like this. Let's find a piece of paper to wrap it up. As he said this, the person sitting next to him picked up a newspaper and spread it on the chair, and asked her to quickly put the shit cloth on it. How can writing paper be wrapped in shit cloth? She came up with another trick. I will bear the blame alone. I couldn't help but get angry. Then a worker was called to carry a suitcase, a small mesh basket, and many cans and boxes. She held the baby in her arms, and I held a pack of shit racks under my arms, and we left the station together. When we got to the room and sat down, we were going to talk about old times. We hadn't seen each other for 7 years, and there was a lot to talk about. So I said, I heard that you and Mr. Zhu went through a lot of trouble in getting married, but now you have actually achieved your goal. And you have this little angel. Are you very happy? She didn't answer me. She took off her high heels, pulled out a pair of leather slippers from the small mesh basket and put them on. She handed the child a package of things. The child had already climbed onto my bed and put me on. He held the white Indian silk pillow in his arms like a doll. When he saw the package, he immediately dropped the pillow, put his little hand stained with runny nose into the bag, took out a lot of lemon candies, and put them on a white blanket. I couldn't help frowning, but she didn't care. She wiped his nose with a handkerchief and continued, I don't think it's possible what you just said. Paul, why did you put the candy on your butt? She said, while talking. She took out the candy sitting under his butt for him and stuffed it into his mouth. Actually, men are always the same. Whether they are in love or not is just a silly thought in the virginity period. After having children, who will still have it? Are you talking about love in this spare time? I regret that I hurt my mother too much. There was only a sound, and Bauer had nailed my picture to the wall. He took off the picture of Caleb and tore it into two pieces. G hurriedly hugged him in his arms and touched his hand. Don't touch this nail. It stings your hand. It's not for fun. You are so childish. You like to pin pictures of female celebrities on the wall. What should you do now that he has torn them apart? It doesn't matter. I don't like it that much. Just tear it up. I forced a smile. I also have a girl. Did you know? I know. Your cousin at Jinling Women's University told me. She also told me the name of your place. Mom, Banana. Banana. The child suddenly discovered the banana I put on the bookshelf in the morning. Give it to him? I asked. What if I don't give it to him? So I took one for him, one for Jay, and one for myself, but the child didn't make enough noise. So Jay peeled off one of hers and handed it to him. To me he smiled and said, "Children are always delicious." After he was weaned, he had to eat a lot of snacks every day. When his stomach hurts, his father blamed me. We often quarreled over this. But you kids who are still breastfeeding are better. How old is your little baby? Almost 1 year old. Our babysitter is 1 year and 8 months old. He is a perfect match. Let's get married. What are you talking about? I couldn't help but be stunned. Didn't you yourself run away because you opposed your old marriage? I've told you this before, but it's really boring. After all, you were married by the order of your parents. And the relationship between husband and wife is not necessarily as good as ours. Although Q and I have a free union, since we gave birth to Bauer, our relationship has changed. People often argue, for example, if Paul tears up one of his pictures. What's the point? Wouldn't it be over if he just paints another one? But he loves to quarrel with me in a red-faced manner. How can a son still be worth it? Not painting? It means that the child is not good. And I didn't ask him to do this on purpose. What do people at this age know? And what do you think Bauer is doing? I interrupted her. When she looked back hurriedly, she saw the child lifting up her robe. She hurriedly hugged him over and said, "He's about to urinate. Bring me the spittoon quickly." I handed the spittoon over as said, but before he could set it down, he had already peed. It sprayed onto my wrist, and by the time I positioned the spittoon properly, a large pool of watery urine was mostly spilled on the floor. So those who washed their hands and mopped the floor were busy for a while. Although he is only over 1 year old, he never pees on his pants. Many children who are 6 or 7 years old still pee on the bed at night. Jay told me proudly. When I was about to give him a few compliments, Xiang came back, so we all exchanged some polite words. The child saw that there was another stranger in the room and clamored to go out, so Ji carried him alone to North Sichuan Road to watch the trams. Xian saw that my bed was littered with banana peels and shredded paper, and the pillows had been thrown on the floor. He couldn't help but look at me and smile. "How? The little angel made your bed look like this. I think I'll let them do it tonight. Mother and son will sleep on this bed. Take out the pillowcases and blankets and wash them tomorrow. You can sleep on my bed while I go to the Hongkou Hotel to get a room. You might make her uneasy if you sleep outside. I think we can just stay here for the night. Otherwise, I can sleep on the floor." While everyone was discussing, dinner was delivered. I hurriedly asked him to bring it back and ordered it. Several bowls of rice and a meal were prepared and delivered together. Unexpectedly, the packed meal had not yet been delivered. Angie came back first with Bauer in his arms. He said that he was very happy at first seeing the constant traffic of cars, but then he fell asleep again for some reason. So I hurriedly made their beds and let Bauer sleep first. After dinner, everyone chatted for a while. In a low voice, Bauer turned around from time to time and interrupted me again and again. At night, the child would wake up crying from time to time, peeing and eating milk from time to time. The light was left on all night. Xian and I slept on the same bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. I wondered why the beauty in the old poem did not like to stay alone. In my experience, I feel that it is much more comfortable to lie on the bed alone with legs and arms stretched out than to have to people wrapped in a quilt and even have to worry about farting. That night, I fell asleep until about 5 o'clock in the morning, but I could hear some sounds outside. I seemed to hear Bauer peeing just before dawn. At 6:30, Bauer's crying woke me up again, and Xian turned around without speaking. I knew that he didn't sleep well last night, and he had something to do after 9 o'clock today, so I was very anxious. So I hurriedly turned over and came down. Ji was already dressing Bauer and stuffing something into his mouth to stop crying. I put on my clothes and hurriedly called the second landlady to make some water for him. After that, I went back. When I was in the room, I stepped on a pile of wet things. When I looked carefully, my God, there was shit under the bed. I thought it was Bauer who spread it last night. Ji also saw it and hurriedly explained that it was because she had placed the spittoon in the right position. It's not good. It's not Bauer's fault. As he said that, he asked me for some pieces of toilet paper and wiped the floor myself. After washing the noodles, I told her that the milk would be delivered round 8 o'clock. If she was hungry, we could go to a nearby noodle shop to eat some shrimp noodles. She agreed, so we quickly left the room and let Xiandi sleep peacefully. In the noodle shop, Bauer broke another big bowl, and I paid a dime to settle the matter. It was only 7:15 after we finished eating the noodles, so I thought Xian might not be up yet, so I suggested go into Kunshan Garden to play. Angie readily agreed. Bauer seemed very happy on the way. I thought he was much more beautiful than last night. When we arrived at the park, there were already many tourists. There were Caucasian children led by Chinese nannies. There were Japanese women watching the children playing happily on the mound while knitting sweaters quickly. There were also people in the pavilion, Japanese man reading a book alone. Among the many children, I loved an Indian baby the most. He was about 4 months old, with a small dark face and big, bright eyes. He was held in the arms of a wet nurse. I couldn't help but go to hold his little hand. How can such a subjugated slave care about him? Ji didn't think so, but he found a blonde girl to play with, but the child didn't seem to pay much attention to her. Suddenly, Bauer pulled the girl's hair. There was a slap on Bauer's face, and she burst into tears. Ji also got angry and scolded her for not hitting people. The nanny hurriedly came to persuade her. Forget it. This girl lives in the garden. The father in the red house here is a foreigner. He is as fat as a pig and fierce. He will kick people with his feet when he is unhappy at this time. Many people in the garden gathered round to watch the excitement. I felt feeling a little embarrassed. Ji couldn't stand up, so he picked up Bauer and cursed him out. On the way, he angrily said that foreign children were all savages. Dolly is afraid not to be a robber. When they got home, Xian had already gone out. Bauer was still eating snacks, peeing, and making noises outside for most of the day. Finally, it was round 3:30 in the afternoon, so he hired 2 rickshaws to take them off the ship. After getting to Shiningshao, Ji called the waiter and asked to book a cabin for 1 person. There are many guests today, and there is no room for 1 person. If you don't like being with others, you can go to the dining room. The waiter replied with a half sneer. We don't want to live in the dining room. We want an empty cabin. Ji's face turned red with anger. I was deeply afraid that the waiter would say something unpleasant again, so I hurriedly stepped forward and explained, because we have children, I'm afraid that the noise will make other guests unable to sleep at night. So I hope it's best to occupy a room by myself, since we can't do it today. If it's empty, then I'll just ask you to line up for an empty one. So, the waiter ushered us into room 37. There was already a modern young woman with a small flower made of soft gauze on her temples. Mom, Hua Bauer stretched out his hand to pull her hair, which made her unable to avoid it. Ji didn't apologize to her. He just asked her if she had always lived in Shanghai, whether she was going to Ningbo or Shanghai this time. Finally, he asked her if she could take down the flower and let Bauer play with it for a while. I caught a glimpse of the woman looking a little embarrassed from the side, so I quickly stopped her and said, It's very stuffy in this cabin. Let's go to the side of the ship for a walk. Children also like to watch the excitement. When the baby heard this, he went outside. There is no need to spend it. The 3 of us sat down on an empty berth in the steerage cabin and looked at the people coming and going on the pier outside. The hawker selling fruit candy cakes kept squeezing past us. Of course, I bought a lot of food again. I have a favor for you. G suddenly thought of something and said to me. Q asked me to write a letter to him after arriving in Shanghai to reassure him. Even though I was busy taking care of my son, I forgot about it today. Please go back and write a letter for me tonight. It's easy, I still have a lot to say, but I don't know how to say it. I feel that I must fulfill my duty as a friend and give advice to G, telling her that she cannot raise children in this way. A woman gave up all her youth. It's so boring to spend all your energy on children, only to make them worse. But if you think about it carefully, isn't it true that someone like me, who abandons her children and lives a leisurely life on the surface but is always confused and conflicted in her heart, is more boring than her? I have not yet decided which path I should take, but she is determined to place her soul on her children, just like my mother Ju. She has eliminated all worries and God bless us. They can urinate under the little angel's nose. She found the supreme comfort in Chinese translated hymns that seemed to make sense but did not make sense. This really made me envious and unable to imitate it. Did I still tell her that this was wrong? Or should we simply not say anything? While hesitating, I suddenly heard a stewardess yelling, "What? Your child peed and wet everything I put on the bunk." When I looked down, it was really a Cattell bag. Most of the paper bag was wet, and there was water on the ground. But G was denying it. My children never pee indiscriminately. Maybe it's other water. But the waiter was not willing to admit his mistake, and picked up Bauer's purple shirt. The robe asked her to see clearly. "Look, aren't your pants also wet?" I knew this was a fact, so I had to apologize to the waiter. There is really nothing we can do about the child. "What's in your bag? Isn't it okay? You'd better untie it and take a look," the waiter muttered and went away. G was still arguing alone that Bauer had never peed indiscriminately when he was in Nanjing. I thought it sounded uncomfortable, so I stood up. "Come and say goodbye. Isn't it too early to sail? I plan to live in Zhenhai for a few months before returning to Nanjing. I will come to see you then. Paul may have run away by then, and I won't have to be hugged so hard. Yours, when will my daughter be weaned? I hope to see this little angel next time." Little angel. I couldn't help but sigh softly and left the dock alone.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.